Now we will discuss about classes and methods. So let's start with something called object-oriented features of Python. Python is an object-oriented programming language, which means that it provides features that support object-oriented programming. Okay. It is not easy to define object-oriented programming, but we have already seen some of its characteristics. Programs are made up of object definitions and function definitions, and most of the computation is expressed in terms of operations on objects. Okay, and each object definition corresponds to some object in the real world, and the functions that operate on that object correspond to the ways real world objects interact. So this was quite complicated. Let me explain it to you with an example. So for example, in the time class we defined, it corresponds to the way the people record time of the day, and functions we defined correspond to the kinds of thing people do with time. So similarly, the point and rectangle classes correspond to mathematical concepts of points and rectangles. So far we have not taken advantage of any features that Python provides us for object-oriented programming. So these features are not strictly necessary. Most of them provide alternative syntax for things that we have already done. For example, in the class time program, there was no obvious connection between the class definition and the function definitions that follow. But with some examination, it was shown to you that every function takes at least one object with class time as its argument. So this observation is the motivation for methods. A method is a function that is associated with a particular class. We have seen methods for strings, lists, dictionaries and tuples till now. Now we'll define methods for user-defined types, which is classes. Methods are defined inside a class definition, and in order to make the relationship between the class and the method explicit. So next is the syntax for invoking a method is different from the syntax of calling a function. So these were the two differences between methods and function. So now we'll take functions which we have defined earlier and transform them into methods. This transform is quite simple. You can do it by following a sequence of steps. If you are comfortable converting from one form to another, you will be able to choose the best form for whatever you are doing. So in the earlier part of this tutorial, we defined a class time and wrote a function named print time to print out the time. To call this function, we first created created an object for the class and then passed the value inside the variables of the object, and then we called the printtime function to display the values. To make printtime function a method, all we have to do is move the function definition inside the class definition. So now let's redefine our class and make it as a class based on methods. Okay, so class time okay, just let me make it to you. Now there are two ways to call the function printtime. The first and the less common one is to use the function syntax. So we can use the function syntax method as follows. Type in the class name dot function name Okay, and then pass the value or the object which I have created earlier in the last part of the tutorial. So you can see that it has printed out the time. In this use of dot notation, time is the name of the class and print name is the method, and start is passed as a parameter. The second way is to use method syntax. To use this method syntax, we type in the object name in which we have passed the values earlier, dot function inside the class as a method, and then press enter. Sorry. What's the error here? Let me check. Okay, I have to reassign the object to the class. Then I again assign these values to the variables of the object start, and then I used start dot print time as the method syntax. Here start is the object and print time is the name of the method, and inside this method the subject is assigned to the first parameter. So in this case start is assigned to time. By convention the first parameter of a method is called self, so it would be more common to write in the class. Okay. If I use self here and in every place of time if I use self, okay, the reason for this convention is that the syntax for a function call print time and in bracket the object suggests that the function is active agent. It says something like, hey object, hey function print time, here is an object for you to print. In object oriented programming, the objects are the active agent. A method invocation like start.printtime says, hey start, please print yourself. So in the examples we have seen so far, we have not seen these things, but sometimes shifting responsibility from the functions onto the objects makes it possible to write more versatile functions and make it easier to maintain and reuse codes. So here another example which I am going to show you to clarify this concept of self. So here is another version of increment function which we declared earlier. Now I am going to define it inside the class. Okay. Just let me type it out. So our new class is this, okay, and I have to reassign the object start to time, then start.hour equal to 9, start.minute equal to 37, start.second equal to 0, and now I am printing out the time, and now I have incremented it by 1337 seconds, which is 20 minutes, 20 to 23 minutes approximately. Okay, and you can see that it is 22 minutes and 17 seconds. So when I incremented the time by 1337 seconds, it adds to the time by changing the seconds and minute values both. So the subject start gets assigned to the first parameter self, and the argument 1337 gets assigned to the second parameter, seconds in the function increment. This mechanism can be confusing, especially if you make an error. So first time, if you evoke increment with two arguments, okay, you evoked increment with two arguments, you get end equal to start dot increment 1337, 460. Say, let's perform this thing again. So you will get what I'm saying. Okay. So you might be thinking that the increment function has two parameters, so I need to pass two parameters. So if I pass two parameters, it shows me a type error that increment takes two positional arguments but three were given. So the error message is initially confusing because there are only two arguments in parentheses and the subject is also considered an argument. So all that's together three and the subject is self here. So we do not need to pass any value to the self parameter. We only need to pass values to the parameter other than self. Okay. The next method in classes is the init method. It is short for initialization and it is a special method that gets invoked when an object is instantiated. So it's represented by this two underscores init and then two underscores. So in init method for the time class might look like this. So let's define the class time again. Or say let's take the class from the up only. Okay. Or let's define it again only. So you will get a better understanding. Define init. Okay, and then in parentheses, one is subject self, second parameter is r, which I have defaulted to 0. Third parameter is minute, which I have also defaulted to 0. And fourth parameter is second, which I have also defaulted to 0. It is common for the parameters of init to have the same names as the attributes. The statement self.r is equal to r stores the value of the parameter r as an attribute of self. And the parameters, these parameters hour, minute and second are optional. So if I have created this function init in the class time with no arguments, then I'll get the default value. So if I assign any object to the class time and I need to define the print time function also in the class time. Okay, so I am going to make a change in a class. Okay, so now if I try to print out the time, okay, you can see that it is showing 0, 0, 0. So, but what if I provide one argument in the print time, or say this statement? If I provide argument say 9, then you can see the our values change. If I provide two arguments, you can see that two values have changed. And now if I provide three arguments, you can see that all the three values have changed. So this was all about init method. The next method which I will teach you is str method. The str method is a special method just like it, and it is supposed to return a string representation of the object. And similar to init, str is also written in this way, and with the two underscores, then str, and after str two underscores. So let's add this function to our class time. Okay. And so now if I assign any object to our class time, set time equals to time, and I pass two parameters inside, say 9, 37, and now if I print time, sorry, okay, it is showing some error. There is small modification in our class. Instead of print, we have to use return here. Okay. So now time equals to time 9,37, and now if I print time, you can see that it has returned the string type values and printed out the time. So now let's move into the last topic in object-oriented programming, is inheritance. Okay, in inheritance I will teach you about something called subclasses and superclasses. And what is subclass and superclass? It helps us to inherit all the traits of a particular class into another class. If you are familiar with CSS, then you might have heard about parent class, child class, inheritance, etc. So let's get started. To understand the concept of inheritance, we need to create two classes. So first let's create a class which is named parent class. Okay, and it has two variables inside it, which says im variable 1 and the second variable is variable 2, which says I am variable 2. Okay, and to inherit this class into other class, so you need to create the second class, say class child class, and after you have typed in the name in which you want to inherit the class, then in parentheses type in the name of the class which you want to inherit in your class. Okay, and then type pass. Sorry, I have used spelling error, parent class. Okay. So I have inherited all the traits of this class into this class, and how to use the functions of this class, parent class, into the child class, and let me just show you. To use the concepts of inheritance, we need to first create two objects, one for the parent class and one for the child class. So let's create two objects. First object is object 1, okay, which I have assigned to the parent class with empty parenthesis. And if I try to access the variable 1, say object 1 dot variable 1, it shows that I am variable 1. So if I try to access a variable 2, it shows I am variable 2. Now I need to assign an object for the child class, so let's assign it. Okay, and if I try to access variable 1 from object 2, it can access that and shows I am variable 1, and for variable 2 it does the same. It shows that when you type any class name inside parenthesis after the class name, then it inherits all the traits of that class, and all the variables inside the parent class can be used with the help of object from the child class. This is useful whenever you want to copy any class into another class, and you do not have to type in every statement from one class to another class to copy it from one class to another. So it gets pretty useful there. And this concept of parent class and child class is also called subclass and superclass. The class which inherits the traits is called subclass, and the class whose traits are being inherited is called superclass. So this was the concept of subclasses and superclasses. Now I want to tell you that the methods which we used, init and str method, are called constructor methods. And one more thing in inheritance is that multiple parent classes. So let's see how the concept of multiple parent classes work. Okay, so let's say I have class named mom, and it has variable 1 which is saying mom, and then I have a class which is named dad, and it has a variable 2 named dad, and the third class is there which is child, and okay, and it inherits both the traits of mom and dad. So how it can do this? You need to type in both the name of the classes which you want to inherit in the child class, okay, and pass. Sorry, I made a mistake there, so let me create it again. Okay, now I create 3 objects for each class. Okay, and with the help of object 3, I can access the variables of mom and dad class. Okay, you can see that. So this was all about object-oriented programming. So in the next tutorial I will teach you about how to work with files, So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.